Welcome to another episode of From the Music Store radio show. Today we're talking with Milton, who is a New York City-based musician. His band, The Loyals, has been keeping the party going at weddings and events for over 10 years. He's going to talk with us about how his band got started, along with some of the crazier things that have happened at weddings that he's played at, most particularly his own. For more information about our show, please visit us at FromTheMusicStore.com. Real quick, why don't you give us a quick background on your qualifications, why you are even here in the first place?
Sure. Well, I don't know. I mean, so my personal qualifications, I've been the leader of a wedding band, officially a wedding band, for about going on 15 years. Prior to that, I was just a musician playing gigs and writing songs, and would be asked informally by people, hey, maybe you and some of your guys could play a wedding. And it literally happened, it was 2010, we were playing a wedding in that sort of way for a friend of mine, and there was just a guy in one of the guests at the wedding who came up to us and he said, you know, I happen to run a wedding band agency, and I like you guys better than the bands we have in our agency. Have you ever thought about, you know, real representation in this regard? And I really hadn't. I mean, it was something that we just sort of did informally. And I was excited to meet the guy who was very ambitious. His name was Aaron Thurston. He himself was a jazz musician who had found ways to book State Department tours for jazz combos. And then from that had gotten into bigger event booking, and then started realizing, you know, just the whole world of wedding bands and wedding marketing.
Wait. State Department. This is not like military gigs. This is like you're going to play in embassies or something?
That's right. So jazz combos would be sort of like musical ambassadors and play embassies and consulates and embassy parties all over the world.
I want that gig. That's a great gig.
He did it for years, and the piano player from my band did it for years. The countries, you know, he'll say, oh yeah, I was walking down the street, you know, in Singapore. What were you doing there? Well, I was on a State Department tour, you know, India, Pakistan, whatever, all kinds of places all over the world. And they would do that.
Wow.
I don't know that still exists within the budget of the United States government. It did for a time. I don't know if it does now.
Well, remember that old story back in the 90s, like a hammer cost like $10,000? I think they can afford to pay like a jazz band. Yeah,
probably. I'm sure they could afford it. Whether they're willing to these days, I have no idea.
So you met him literally at a gig?
Playing a wedding, yeah.
So when we do interviews with people that are in the industry, like we find a lot of people that are like in, you know, like one of the goals in the interviews is like people that are making careers in music and they're not like on the cover of Rolling Stone. And they're usually really interesting people, and they just have great careers. And one of the things that comes up is like, well, how did that even happen, right? How did you even get there? So here you are, you're playing a wedding, but then there's a guy there who does wedding bookings.
That's right. Well, I've said throughout my entire career, I have a booking agent for my own stuff and one for the wedding band. And I've said, I've noticed throughout my entire career that you can't really go looking and asking someone, hey, dig my vibe. You could try, but generally speaking, agents and people that represent people, and granted, I realize that the industry has changed dramatically in the 30 years that I've been involved. But generally speaking, I would say they like to catch something that's live, that they see is happening and say, hey, I could make this bigger. I see the potential in it from what you're already doing. So nobody's going to say, "Oh, well, you're just a really nice guy. Let's have the career fairy tap you on the head with a wand." You got to be out there doing stuff to be seen in the first place. So generally speaking, somebody sees you while you're at it, or knows somebody who knows somebody, all of that kind of thing, and is interested. People aren't unless you're very, very young and showing incredible amounts of talent. You know, wild amounts of talent for a young person, and someone envisions an entire career, you know, early on, which it does happen, but less frequently. Agents and interested people want to see something that's up and running that they can then, position towards more money making and more expansion of career.
So
but they want to see that it's.
Well, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of like pretending I'm somebody who's like, yeah, that's the gig I want, right? So are they? Let's go to that gig, that exact gig. Now, were you doing that as like a solid for a friend? Did you get paid for that gig? Were you below rate on that gig? So in other
Okay,
words,
so
like
the-
to do it, you got to do it. So would you suggest to like a young band, like, hey, like if you're going to do it, like go out and like your best buddy gets married, do the band.
Absolutely. First of all, we were getting paid. And it's so funny, though, back in those days, I was just such a broke gigger from the clubs that when someone would say, listen, we'd like you to play our wedding, I'd say, okay, but that's going to be involved. We're going to have to learn a bunch of material, and that's going to cost you. And the number I would come up with would be ridiculously low by the standards of the industry, because I didn't realize, that you could actually get paid a decent wage for these things. So I always tell people, first of all, go out and play every opportunity you have. If you want to play, then play all the time. Figure out if you actually like it that much. If you're doing it all the time and you love it and you still love it, then keep going. I always think about when it's early in the season in baseball, I happen to love baseball, and you see these guys out there, they're going to play 160 odd games or whatever, and they're warming up, they look really enthused, and you think, you're going to have to do this again every day for days and days and days. But if you're a ball player, you love it. And that's the way I feel about gigs. If you love playing, then you love it, and you want to make opportunities to do it. It won't pay right out the gates, but there's ways to make money doing it. And the best way to get started is to get started.
Well, what I do?
Not to wait at home.
Yeah. I have this conversation with students and people I know that talk about gigs and stuff. And we have a show's called From the Music Store, right? We have a music store. There are 2 restaurants surrounding us. So I say to people, if you want to play, pick up your guitar and go outside. In front of the store, there are guaranteed to be people out there. They will be walking by. So don't tell me,
Right.
Don't complain to me about no playing opportunities. You make your own opportunities. But I tell kids too, it's like there are no venues for like your punk band or your metal band. Go rent a VFW hall. Don't wait for the gig to come to you. Make it.
And myself going back to high school, that's what we were doing. We would, somebody's garage or someplace, or we'd talk to someplace in the town and use some hall and whatever, and somebody's basement, whatever. That's how it started for sure. But if you want to talk about weddings, we can talk about that for sure.
No, let's get back to the wedding. Let's get back to the wedding.
Sure.
But there's a through line through all of our interviews, from everybody who are film composers to live touring sound guys to band managers, is that the only way to start is to start.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Yeah,
so
it's like
let's get back to, so you're at the wedding, you meet the guy. Now, afterwards, he calls you whatever, then do you like look at your buddies who were doing that gig with you and you're like, hey guys, like we never thought about this, but like, I don't know, this could be a good paying gig. Do you want to do it?
Well, some of us had thought about it, and we just didn't know where to begin. We didn't know how to build the infrastructure and how to get promotional in a way that was effective at the time. I think, once again, we of the 21st century find that so many things coincide with where we were technologically, where we were in terms of internet, where we were in terms of social media, what was going on at that time in terms of new ways to reach people that we hadn't realized at different times. So I was very much a product of the 20th century. I went to college in the 90s. That's when I started playing gigs. So my mind didn't work. My mind still worked the way when I started. Your press kit and your agent and your, calling people on the telephone and sending out postcards in the mail to your mailing list. So my mind hadn't even adapted to many of the ways that you might reach a lot of people and stuff. And Aaron, my agent, and now one of my closest friends, he was very hip to everything that was going on at the time in Brooklyn in terms of 20-something and 30-somethings social sites and places that people were talking about weddings and different kinds of weddings. Because in New York City, as you might know, there are a few big agencies that dominated the industry of weddings and public events for a long time. A disproportionate number of events would be going to these people, and you'd get the feeling, I would get the feeling when I ended up at some kind of a catered event with my friends, why does every party have to be like this? What is the deal with this? Guys in rented tuxedos playing the same hits. They don't look like they know each other. They don't look like they know the music. This is no fun, and it doesn't speak to the clients. Like, what a bummer. Why do we have to do it this way? And of course, like everything else in sort of hip New York, all of these young people who were making a decent living started thinking, we don't have to do this. What if we had weddings that we liked with music that we liked, where the band was a real band, and they were actually really enjoying themselves, and we were enjoying them. So there really was a hunger for this thing.
But it sounds like, and I know from our conversations that you're doing it a little bit different than like maybe a straight up wallpaper gig. When you talk about it, like you're seeing different guys look like they never met each other, they're showing up at some kind of corporate function or maybe and I don't want to make any disparaging remarks against somebody's wedding, but I can imagine a movie scene where there's a hedge fund tycoon's daughter getting married and there's a huge band in the background, but they're about as much as a part of the scene as the palm trees and the lighting and the hors d'oeuvres, right?
Right. Well, so there's all these people. I'm not dissing the musicians. Everybody's trying to play a gig and make a living. And a lot of people have the skills to do it. So you have these giant cattle call agencies that have the contacts and the connections with hotels and venues and planners. And there's all these guys that went to music school and played gigs and can play that'll take the call because they need the money. I always tell people they say, I'd never want to play weddings. That's not rock and roll or whatever issue they have with it. That's not creative, what have you. The first thing I'll say is, well, in the world of the realistic, payment-wise, one wedding equals 10 rock gigs. Right? So there's that, right? Therefore, if you're sweating the bills less, although every musician's always hustling and always sweating the bills, it gives you more room to do creative things, actually, and to work more. And the second thing that I'll say in favor of the whole thing, no matter what you're doing, whether it's my band or any band on the spectrum of wedding bands, is it makes you tougher as a musician. I would go on the road, and still to this day, play a month of dates, and someone would say, "Oh, it's grueling, isn't it?" And I would laugh. I'd say, I don't know, you're on stage especially if I'm on the road opening for somebody, you're on stage for 40 minutes, the same set every night. It's tough traveling and stuff, but that's nothing compared to you're on for 6 hours and you have 80 songs to prepare.
I think, I don't know if that came out, maybe it was misconstrued, but what I know about you, which is a little bit different, is you don't come in and you're like, we play, top 40 right now. In fact, we were texting earlier today and you were telling me, well, and then I got to prep for this wedding gig. I got to learn some tunes. So you're a little bit more unique in that you were saying before there was a group of people that were in New York that were like, we don't want to go down this cookie cutter way. There are other bands that do other styles of music. And here you are. You're obviously customizing for somebody's wedding. I think tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. Well, we're recording this on Friday, tomorrow, by the way. Yeah. So Saturday, he's got a wedding.
Yeah, Saturday, I'll be in the Strand at the Rare Books Room. Somebody rented that out for their wedding.
Oh, I used to have my office on top of that building.
Yeah. Right near where you and I went to school.
Yeah. Were you an NYU guy?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, so I digress talking about what I think is great about how wedding gigs make you tougher. But as far as what I do compared to those kind of big agency groups, yes. So the main differences are, number one, the nucleus of my band, which is 6 people, and really kind of 2 horn sections. So really it's the same, it rotates around the same 10 people, but it's really 6 people plus horn section A or horn section B, essentially. It's been the same for over 10 years, right? So rather than a bunch of people who, get one band leader and all the people they call for that night, it's actually a group that has worked together all these years. That's one thing that's very different. And then the second thing is, we don't do necessarily the hits of the year or all the stuff that every DJ is going to play or you imagine every wedding band in a catering hall is going to play. We play stuff that, generally speaking, we love. We initially started out playing like old R&B, Stax, Motown, New Orleans, Memphis, that kind of thing. Then we branched out completely in all different kinds of directions. But the thing that keeps it all together, that what's the word I'm looking for, that joins it all, is that it's just stuff that we love, that we think is groovy and terrific, and we'd want to jump up and dance to if we were at a party. And we go in a lot of directions because a bunch of the guys are trained in jazz. They went to New England school, or they went to Berkeley school or Manhattan school, and so we play jazz for whole different segments of weddings and stuff. Some of us really like to play acoustic music and bluegrass and roots and all that stuff. So very often a whole segment of the wedding is string band, and the bass player's playing us upright, and I'm playing acoustic, and the lead guitar player's playing mandolin, and we're doing that stuff.
So, and to anybody, I mean, that is so not at all what the regular wedding band lineup is.
That's right.
It's like I've worked with, I've no agents, I've done weddings in many different capacities. But like coming out and busting out some Earl Scruggs is not a normal. Now it's the kind of wedding band I'd like to have.
Well, so as far as that part goes, generally speaking, so then maybe you might get like the country act that comes, and guys have cowboy hats and they play, big Nashville hits or something like that, or there are niche bands that somebody hires a bluegrass band for their wedding. But as far as being able to go in multiple directions in an authentic way, not just like, goofing at it. That's kind of rare. It's true. Yeah.
To help us put everything in perspective. So like, for instance, you have this wedding tomorrow, you have to learn a couple of new tunes. And I imagine every band would say, hey, well, what is your wedding song? Cause that's kind of what led us into this conversation in the first place. So for instance, so you've set up the backdrop like of a band that's got horns, Americana, a little bit of New Orleans thing going on. But then are they like, okay, we really want you to play this Shakira tune? Yeah.
So for the most part, when clients get in touch and they're interested in the band, they've seen videos or they've been referred by a venue or a planner, and they've talked about what they had in mind, and somebody thought we were a good fit, or they saw videos or happened to be at a wedding conference and thought we were a good fit. Still, even when that happens, a lot of people will say, listen, our favorite artist is Taylor Swift, and we want to do this, and so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. For the most part, in the conversation and in the materials that we send to them, we can determine whether this is a good fit or not. And we never try to use car salesman anyone and say, hey, we could do it no matter what it is, because we don't want it, and they don't want it.
So you turn down gigs. You'd be like, we are not the band for you?
Definitely.
That's not normally.
Many times,
usually most musicians like I got a call from an agent looking for like a German band like for Oktoberfest, like Lederhosen. I'm like, I mean, I speak German, I could probably do it, but then I'm like, I'm not going to do it. But like mostly musicians like, yeah, a gig, oh yeah, sure, no problem, Oktoberfest, I can do it.
When we started out and I was really hungry and new at it, I would say yes to more things because I thought I was scared of not getting the gig and starving and what have you. Since then, we've learned a lot that if it's not a fit, it's not a fit, and everybody's going to be happier. Now, that said, anytime we play a wedding, if we're doing the ceremony, for instance, because very often we'll do all three segments of a wedding, ceremony, cocktail hour, 4 segments sometimes with dinner, ceremony, cocktail hour, dinner music, and the whole reception dance party. Different, pieces of the personnel for different times. But most often when we're doing a ceremony, the processional, the recessional, these are instrumentals, versions of songs that are personal to the clients that we've learned and rearranged for the purposes of their ceremony. So that's always homework. That's always whatever they want. It could be any song. I mean, it doesn't matter for that. We don't care, we don't discriminate stylistically because if it's personal to the couple, we want them to have that for their ceremony. And then same thing with requests. If these people really want something, we're going to do it. Generally, that's in the 1s and 2s of songs, though. So we'll do something that's totally contemporary, that's a giant mega hit that they want. What did we do last week? Something by The Killers. I'd never played anything by The Killers before, but they wanted it, so great.
But did you do it within, because you have an unconventional band, though, so you did it within you didn't make it try to sound like the recording. You said, well, we've got horns, we've got strings, mandolin, whatever. So we're gonna do it within the vein of the band that you have.
Quite honestly, no. We've done that a little bit. We've rearranged things to our style a little bit. But generally speaking, when people are having a party, they want what they know and what's familiar and fun for them. So the Killers, for that song, for instance, Mr. Brightside, probably the biggest Killer song as far as I know. I don't know the Killers very well, but we just had the electric instruments like a rock band. 2 electric guitars, the bass drums, and a keyboard playing the synth parts.
Oh, so you did it straight
for
up.
That, yeah.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. If we're playing I Want to Dance with Somebody by Whitney, we'll play it like Whitney, for that, as much as we can. Now, it's another thing. A lot of these giant catering hall bands, because I've gotten calls from the agencies, hey, we need a guy for this thing, can you do it? you go there and there's like 7 guys on stage of different vocalists, you know? Some of them stand there until it's their turn to do their thing. So I've gotten calls that's like, can you be the classic rock guy,
oh, wow.
you know, on this wedding? And I'm like, I can, you know, what's it pay, what have you. But as far as our band, there's a male lead vocalist, female lead vocalist, and the keyboardist will sing additional harmonies. And that's it. And whatever style we're working in, that's who's doing it, you know? And so it is personal to our band in that regard. But for the most part, we try to be as close to the records as we can be within the limitations of instrumentation. And so when a client calls, for instance, and says, we want this thing, and they give you a hip-hop record, and you say to them, listen, there are limited real instruments on the record, so we can't really replicate this sound. If we did it with instruments, it would probably not sound like you're used to it sounding, so you sure you want that kind of thing? And if they say yes, then we'll do it. But, you know, we like to sort of guide them in that direction as far as, well, I'm a musician, so it's my responsibility to say what have you. Like, for instance, changing the topic, but first dance requests, we get everything, man. Even if it's within the genre of stuff we play, people will give you a breakup song and tell you that's what they want for their first dance.
I was going to ask you, like, give me some, that's a great segue. So give me some of the, across the board, some of the stranger requests you've had. Breakup one is kind of weird on your wedding day.
Yeah, but some of them are not are stranger than you'd think if you never thought about it, right? So someone said, what we want for our first dance is Wild Horses by the Stones. And it sounds like, well, it's a classic. Everybody loves the Stones, and Wild Horses couldn't drag me away. Great. And what I say to them is, listen, this is a moment when everybody's going to be watching and listening. So it's my responsibility to show you what the lyrics are and ask you if you actually want this. Right? So it's like, I watched you suffer a dull aching pain. Now you decided to show me the same, you know? Faith has been broken. Tears must be cried. Like, do you want me to sing this in front of your mom and dad when you do?
Right, yeah.
And sometimes they say, yes, we do. And so I say, okay, we're working for you. That's what you want? Great. You know, other times they say, thank you for letting me know, what have you. But yeah.
So now that begs the question. You were a somewhat recently betrothed, I think that's the word. Now, family man?
Well, I think I'm married, but when you're betrothed, isn't that you're just engaged, I don't know. I think?
See?
Or, I'm not sure.
So, well, you're, okay. All right. You got me on the English part. All right, so you're hitched. You got all hitched.
I am. Very, very happily
hitched. So what was your song? What was your wedding song, the first dance song?
Ours is a very specific and bizarre circumstance, so I'm going to lay it on you. So my wife, as you know, but the audience doesn't, is also a musician and a singer. And we both had a long background of singing all different kinds of events, but also she worked many years in restaurants, and I've worked in the wedding industry for all these years. So we thought, well, listen, this is ridiculous. We know how to do this. So we just produced and ran our entire wedding. And the band was made up of just our friends and people, you know, our colleagues. And there was, my wife is Greek. So we had classical musician friends play the ceremony. And then we had a Greek ensemble of friends of hers play the cocktail hour. And there's a lot of traditional dancing during that part. And then we had all guys from the rock and jazz groups in the reception. But there was this unforeseen circumstance, which was awesome that it happened to us, because here we are, veterans of all these weddings, having played a million weddings. There was an electrical fire in the wires between the building where the venue that we rented and the next door houses in this residential neighborhood up in Scarsdale, New York, and all the power was lost in the building. So the band had just started at that point. And all of a sudden, we were in pitch darkness. And the fire department came, and we thought we were all going to get kicked out because they had all these people in this unlit building. And they actually just set up floodlights for us. And the musicians at that point, the bass player borrowed the upright from the guy from the ceremony, and the keyboardist hopped on the antique piano that was in this old Victorian house, and the drummer's playing drums. Sax player didn't need an amp, right? And there was an accordion guy, and he didn't need to be plugged in. So the dance party just continued. We hadn't gotten to any of the personal dances, unfortunately. So we didn't do our dance, the two of us. We did Always by Irving Berlin for our parents. Her parents were about to celebrate 60 years of marriage, and mine 59. So we had this Irving Berlin Always song for them, and then we lost power. So sung by my friend Kat Edmondson, the singer. So we never got to any personal songs ourselves.
You know, that's a good omen, though. Like, I was supposed to get married. My wife is from the Caribbean, and we were supposed to get married on the beach in the island that she's from. And basically, a hurricane rolled in that day, and we ended up getting married inside the bar at the resort, which is just not what she had been envisioning. Basically, her whole life, pouring rain and all that. People getting so drunk they were literally falling out of their chairs during the ceremony. Literally, you know, they say, what is that? You know, like a bird craps on you, right? It's good luck. You know, if you can get through your first day, you know, sample of the challenges that life is going to give you, right? Just get it right in the beginning. And you get through that first day, the rest is all good, no problem.
We had a blast, to tell you the truth. We wouldn't have done any other way. And the fact that the party raged on was even better.
How many oopas or hoopah did you get?
Yeah, a lot.
I'm a huge, my big fat Greek wedding fan, and like back in the day, I got hammered with Olivia Dukakis at a Greek festival and danced with her for like hours. But that's a different story.
Awesome.
So we're getting to the end of our time. How do people find out about your band?
So the name of my group is the Loyals, which is loyal with an E at the end of it. Loyals.com. LOYALES.com. And then the name of the agency that books us, that has a number of acts, is called Lucy Music, lucymusic.com. And you can see clips of the band and everything that we do on the loyals.com. You can see stuff. We play different places in different venues. And mostly right now we're in high season, so every weekend's a wedding or an event somewhere else. But in the off season, we play different venues so people can come see us and hear what we do.
Also, real quick, Milton, your original stuff is, I know it's on Spotify, but how do people find you?
Yeah, so miltonmusic.com. And Spotify, the most recent album is called Studio City, and the easiest way to find it on Spotify is to search Studio City Milton. Just put those three words, Studio City Milton, and my most recent album will come up. And I hope you will take a listen, because I spent a lot of time on that. I think it's really good stuff. Take a listen.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being on From the Music Store. Jeremy's out. He's on the road in Virginia doing some theater gigs. We'll be back next week. You can listen to this episode on FromTheMusicStore.com and WBNJ.org. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you guys all next week.
And things began to happen I ain't never felt before. I really go for what you got, and that's saying a lot. All I can say is, ooh, baby, I love you. Ooh, baby, I love you. There's a song I sing in my heart. I sing it to you, baby, any old time.